Hey everyone, how's it going? If you haven't met me yet, I'm Monique and I'm from Unholy Trinity Reptiles. And today I'm going to talk to you about one of my favorite geckos, the Pictus Gecko. After this video, you should know everything you need to know about caring for a Pictus Gecko. Who's ready? Let's go. Alright, let's meet the Pictus Gecko. It has a couple different names you might have heard of. The Pictus Gecko, the Ocelot Gecko, the Madagascar Ground Gecko, which, can you guess where they're from? Madagascar. They grow to be around 4 to 6 inches. Males are usually a little bit bigger than females. They are a small gecko, but they are full of personality. They are terrestrial as well. They can climb though, and I have a story to tell you about that later. So now let's talk about enclosures. We recommend at least a 20-gallon for adult Pictus geckos, but obviously bigger is always better, and you can go as big as a 75-gallon if you want to give the little guy a mansion. I don't know if they're going to use the whole thing, but that doesn't mean you can't give them the opportunity to. Now that we talked about enclosures, let's talk about substrate. These guys are from Madagascar, the spiny forest, so you're going to want to use a mixture of soil and play sand, and then you can add excavator clay into that, which helps with them burrowing. They're a burrowing species, and they like to dig holes. The excavator clay makes it so the hole that they burrow kind of stays for them. For Pictus geckos, you want to use at least 3 to 4 inches of substrate so they can actually burrow. The proper amount and the proper substrate is very important, so you have to do your research. Now that we know about the enclosure, let's talk about temperature and humidity. These guys are from Madagascar, which is in Africa, so they need a basking spot of 85 to 90 degrees. How are you going to do that? You can either have an overhead light, such as this, or you can have an under the tank heater, such as that. If you have an under the tank heater, you have to have a thermostat, which is right here. The thermostat is connected to the heat mat. You plug it in here, and then you set the temperature so you know what it's always going to be at. That one is set to 90. A story that we can tell you, Gobi, one of our Pictus geckos, he had a heat mat that had the thermostat connected to it, like it was a dial type heat mat. Wouldn't recommend it. In other words, it malfunctioned, and one day we saw him scaling the back of his cage. So they say these guys are terrestrial geckos, but they can definitely climb if they have to, because he was burning his little buns up and had to get away from the heat. So he climbed all the way to the top of his cage. It was like a wall that Shane built out of, what did you use to build it?
Spray foam.
Spray foam, a spray foam back piece wall to the cage. Cold side for Pictus geckos, you want to keep it around 75 degrees. Humidity, these guys need 50 to 60%. You can achieve that by spraying in the morning and at nighttime, and also your substrate is going to help keep that humidity as well. On top of all that, you need to have 3 hides, 1 on each temperature zone. So 1 on the hot end, 1 in the middle, and then 1 on the cool end. And on top of all that stuff, then you're going to want to clutter up the cage with lots of leaf litter, sticks, because where they're from, their natural habitat has all that. So now let's talk about what these little guys eat. They are insectivores. So what does that mean they eat? Obviously insects. Some staples that you should be feeding them are dubias, crickets, mealworms. You obviously don't want to feed them all of the same thing all the time. That's not good. Do you go around eating the same thing every day, every week? I don't think so. Maybe if you're a bodybuilder, you might be doing that, but not everybody does that. So you shouldn't do that for your reptiles. You can give them the occasional waxworm or hornworm, but not all the time because they're very high in fat. So definitely like a treat, kind of like a candy bar for us. It's very important also that you dust your insects with calcium and D3 every other feeding, and then multivitamins once a week. And on top of that, you want to make sure you gut load the insects that you're going to be feeding your reptiles. So you don't just bring the bugs home from the store and feed them. You want to make sure you bring them home, give them food and water like greens, carrots, vegetables, nutritious stuff to fatten them up before you feed them to your reptiles 24 to 48 hours before. And they need to eat 2 to 3 times a week. And you can kind of gauge that depending on, like, I feel like one of our Pictus geckos, Gobi, kind of got a little bit chubby because he was getting fed too much and he literally sits in his cave, does nothing. Nori, our female, she runs through her cage all night long on top of her hide, whatnot. Alright, now last but not least, we're going to talk about handleability and temperament. Obviously, everybody wants a reptile that they can hold. Well, most reptiles don't want to be held. Like ball pythons, sure. This one loves being held. Not all of them do, but most of them do. Pictus geckos, on the other hand, are a little bit shy and don't necessarily want to be held. A few of ours tolerate being held because I think we've been handling them since they were babies because we hatched them out ourselves. But the males that we have do not like to be held, and they're very scared, skittish. Like I said, Gobi literally just lives in his cave. You see him poke his head out once in a while. But if you do want to try and hold them, your best bet is to go in the enclosure and scoop underneath them. But you should definitely be aware of their body language and if they're getting stressed out or not, because it's not nice to put your reptile through stress. So if they're breathing really fast or scurrying away from you, probably don't try to hold them. They are really wonderful geckos, so I think if you don't have one, you should definitely look into getting one. I love all of our Pictus geckos so much that we have it on our shirt. And one last point I wanted to make is before you even think about getting a reptile, you should definitely have a vet set up, because a lot of people might not even have an exotic vet in their area and they might have to drive an hour plus. And sometimes the vets aren't accepting new clients. So you want to make sure you're prepared with everything before you get a new animal. So do your research, get your cage set up, and then look for your animal. That's the best way to go about it. Well, that's basically everything you need to know about keeping a Pictus gecko. Do any of you have a Pictus gecko? If you do, let us know in the comments what your favorite thing is about your Pictus gecko. If you like this video, hit the like button, share, and subscribe. I'm Monique from Unholy Trinity Reptiles. See you next time.